The fluorescent lights in the nursing home lobby buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made everyone look half dead. I sat in the wheelchair they'd insisted I use, even though my legs worked just fine, watching my son Michael pace back and forth across the linoleum floor. His expensive Italian shoes squeaked with each step, and I could see the sweat stains forming under the arms of his tailored suit, despite the aggressive air conditioning. "Mom, this is for the best," he said for the third time in 10 minutes, not bothering to look at me directly. Instead, he kept checking his phone, probably calculating how much this place was going to cost him monthly. Sunset Manor has excellent reviews, 5 stars on Google. 5 stars, as if my life was a restaurant he was reviewing. I'd raised this boy from nothing, changed his diapers, walked the floors with him when he had colic, worked double shifts at the diner to pay for his college education. Now here he was, 42 years old, treating me like damaged goods he needed to warehouse somewhere convenient. "I can take care of myself," I said, gripping the wheelchair's armrests so hard my knuckles went white. "I've been doing it for 73 years. Michael finally stopped pacing and turned to face me. His face had that practiced patience look he probably used on difficult clients at his law firm. "Mom, you fell last week. You could have broken your hip." "I tripped over the cat. That's not the same as being incapacitated." "You don't have a cat anymore, remember? Whiskers died 2 years ago." The words hit me like a slap. I did remember. Of course I remembered. But sometimes, in the early morning hours, when the house felt too quiet, I'd catch myself putting out 2 bowls of food out of habit. Grief does strange things to your routines. "That doesn't mean I need to be locked up," I said. "You're not being locked up. You're being cared for." He glanced at his Rolex, the one I'd bought him for his law school graduation, spending 3 months of Social Security checks to afford it. "I have a deposition in an hour. The staff will help you get settled." A woman in pale pink scrubs appeared beside us, as if summoned by his words. Her name tag read Brenda, and she had that overly cheerful smile that nurses learn in training, the one that's supposed to make everything seem normal when your world is falling apart. "Mrs. Patterson, welcome to Sunset Manor. I'll be your intake coordinator today." She positioned herself behind my wheelchair without asking permission. "Let's get you to your room so you can start making this place feel like home." Home. I'd lived in the same house for 47 years. The house where Michael had taken his first steps, where I'd taught him to ride a bicycle in the driveway, where I'd waited up countless nights during his teenage years. That was home. This sterile building with its smell of disinfectant and despair was just a holding cell. "I'll visit soon," Michael said, already backing toward the exit. He couldn't get out of here fast enough. "Maybe this weekend." "Maybe?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "I'll call you," he said, and then he was gone, leaving me alone with Brenda and her plastic smile. The room they assigned me was on the 3rd floor, number 314. It had a single bed, a nightstand, and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. My roommate was a woman named Dorothy, who spent most of her time staring at a soap opera on the small television mounted high on the wall. She barely acknowledged my presence when Brenda wheeled me in. "Dinner's at 5, Brenda announced, positioning my suitcase beside the narrow closet. "Activities start at 7. Tonight is bingo, and tomorrow we have chair exercises." Chair exercises? I'd gone from running a household to chair exercises. After Brenda left, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the 4 walls that were supposed to be my world now. The place wasn't dirty or neglected, I'd give it that, but it felt like a waiting room for death, full of people who'd been convinced they were too much trouble for their families. I thought about the house Michael had just condemned me to leave behind, the garden I'd tended for decades, the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals, the living room where we'd opened Christmas presents every year until he'd gotten too busy for family traditions. Everything I'd built, everything I loved, reduced to whatever could fit in 2 suitcases. But as I sat there in the gathering dusk, watching the parking lot empty as the day shift went home to their real lives, something hardened inside me, a resolve I hadn't felt in years. Michael thought he could just dispose of me like an old appliance that had outlived its usefulness. He thought I was just going to fade away quietly, grateful for his expensive solution to the problem of my existence. He was wrong. I pulled out my phone, the one he'd insisted I carry for emergencies, and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. James Whitmore, attorney at law. He'd handled my husband's estate 15 years ago, and he'd been encouraging me to update my will ever since. "Hello, Mr. Whitmore. This is Eleanor Patterson. I need to schedule an appointment. It's urgent." The next morning arrived with the sound of someone's alarm clock beeping relentlessly down the hall. Dorothy was already awake, sitting in the single chair by the window, staring out at the parking lot like she was expecting someone who would never come. She'd been doing the same thing when I'd finally fallen asleep around midnight, so I wasn't sure if she'd moved at all. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound friendlier than I felt. Dorothy turned her head slightly, her cloudy eyes focusing on me with visible effort. "Are you the new girl?" "I'm Eleanor. I arrived yesterday." "Yesterday?" She looked confused. "I thought you'd been here longer than that." I was starting to understand why her family had brought her here. Dorothy's mind was slipping away piece by piece, and every conversation was like starting over with a stranger who happened to share her face. It made me more determined than ever to prove that I wasn't like her, that I still had all my faculties and didn't belong in this place. Breakfast was served in a dining room that tried too hard to look cheerful. Bright yellow walls, artificial flowers on every table, and motivational posters about making the most of your golden years. I sat with 3 other women who'd been assigned to my table: Dorothy, a woman named Margaret who complained about everything, and Sarah, who seemed to be the unofficial social director of the 3rd floor. "You'll like it here once you get used to it," Sarah said, cutting her scrambled eggs into precise squares. "The trick is to stay busy. Sign up for activities, join committees, make friends. Otherwise, you'll just sit in your room feeling sorry for yourself." "I don't plan on being here long enough to get used to it," I said. Margaret snorted. "That's what they all say. Been here 3 years myself. Kept thinking my daughter was going to take me back home. Finally realized she was just waiting for me to die so she could sell the house." "Margaret," Sarah, with practiced patience, "you know that's not true. Your daughter visits every Sunday." 10 minutes. Sets a timer on her phone. I've seen her do it." I pushed eggs around my plate, thinking about Michael's promise to visit maybe this weekend. Would he set a timer too? Calculate exactly how little time he could spend with me and still feel like he'd done his duty? After breakfast, I made my way to the business center, a fancy name for a room with 2 computers and a phone you could use for local calls. I needed to confirm my appointment with James Whitmore, and I didn't want to have this conversation where other people could overhear. "Mrs. Patterson," James' secretary said when I called, "Mr. Whitmore can see you this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Will you need transportation?" "I'll manage," I said, already formulating my escape plan. The hardest part was getting past the front desk. The nursing home didn't exactly lock people in, but they kept track of who came and went. I waited until the afternoon shift change, when everyone was focused on handoff reports and medication schedules, then walked confidently through the lobby like I belonged there. "Going for a walk, Mrs. Patterson?" the desk clerk asked without looking up from her computer. "Just getting some fresh air," I said, which was technically true. Once I was outside, I called a taxi. The driver was a young man with kind eyes who helped me into the back seat without making me feel like an invalid. "Where to?" he asked. "Downtown, Whitmore Law Office." James Whitmore looked older than I remembered, but then again, so did I. His hair had gone completely white, and he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned not to trust his joints. But his mind was sharp as ever, and his eyes lit up when his secretary showed me into his office. "Eleanor, I have to say I'm surprised to hear from you. Last time we spoke, you insisted you didn't need to change anything in your will." That was before my son decided I was too much trouble to keep around. James's expression grew serious as I explained the situation. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me carefully. "Are you sure about this, Eleanor? These are significant changes. Once we put this in writing, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He nodded slowly. "All right then, let's talk about your options." For the next hour, we went through my assets line by line. The house, the savings accounts, the small investment portfolio my husband had left me. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to matter, enough to make Michael pay attention. "I want to establish a trust," I said. "Something that will benefit people who actually need help, not someone who sees me as a burden." "What kind of trust did you have in mind?" I'd been thinking about this since yesterday, turning it over in my mind like a problem I needed to solve. Education. Scholarships for kids who can't afford college. Kids whose parents work double shifts to try to give them a better life. Kids like Michael used to be, before success made him forget where he came from. James smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "That's a beautiful idea, Eleanor. We can set up a scholarship fund through the community college. Name it after your husband if you'd like." "The Robert Patterson Memorial Scholarship Fund," I said, testing how it sounded. "For students who understand the value of hard work." "What about Michael? Are you leaving him anything?" I considered this carefully. I wasn't completely heartless. He was still my son, despite everything. A small bequest. Enough to show I didn't forget him, but not enough to make him comfortable. "How small?" $10,000, and a letter. James raised an eyebrow. "What kind of letter?" "The kind that explains exactly why he's getting $10,000 instead of $300,000. We spent another hour working out the details. The trust would be funded by the sale of the house and the bulk of my savings. There would be enough left over to pay for my own care, wherever I decided to live, but not enough to make Michael rich. "When do you want to sign?" James asked. "Now, today, before I lose my nerve." "Eleanor, you don't have to rush this. Take a few days to think it over." "I've had 73 years to think it over. I know what I want." As I signed the papers, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Power. For the first time since Michael had started making decisions about my life, I was making a decision about his. The taxi ride back to Sunset Manor gave me time to think about what I'd just done. Part of me felt guilty. Michael was my only child, and despite everything, I still loved him. But love doesn't mean letting someone treat you like garbage just because you share DNA. It spent 47 years in that house, making it a home for my family. I'd sacrificed my own dreams, my own ambitions, to make sure Michael had everything he needed. And now, when I needed him most, he'd found me inconvenient. The guilt was there, but it was overshadowed by something stronger: relief. For the first time in months, I felt like I had some control over my own life. Getting back into the building was easier than getting out. The evening shift was settling in, and everyone was focused on dinner preparations. I made it to my room without anyone asking questions, though I did notice Margaret watching me from the end of the hallway with curious eyes. "Where have you been?" Dorothy asked when I walked in. She was back in her chair by the window, but now she had a puzzle spread out on the small table beside her. I was worried. "Just taking care of some business." "What kind of business?" I sat down on my bed and really looked at her for the first time. Dorothy might be losing her memory, but she wasn't stupid. There was still intelligence in those cloudy eyes, still a person worth knowing beneath the confusion. "The kind that makes sure people get what they deserve," I said. She nodded sagely, as if this made perfect sense. Good. Too many people get away with things they shouldn't. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the papers I'd signed, about the trust fund that would help deserving students, about the letter James was holding in his safe, the letter that would explain everything to Michael when the time came. But mostly, I thought about the phone call I needed to make. The next morning, after the breakfast rush and morning medications, I made my way back to the business center. This time I was going to call Michael directly. It was time to let him know that his mother wasn't quite as helpless as he'd assumed. His secretary answered on the second ring. "Morrison, Hayes and Patterson, how may I help you?" "This is Eleanor Patterson. I need to speak with my son." "Oh, Mrs. Patterson, how are you settling in at your new place?" Even his secretary knew where he'd stashed me. "I'm fine, dear. Is Michael available?" "He's in a meeting, but I can have him call you back." "Tell him it's important. Tell him it's about his inheritance." That got his attention. Within 10 minutes, my phone was ringing. "Mom, Sarah said you called about inheritance. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm feeling better than I have in months, actually. I wanted to let you know that I've been to see James Whitmore." There was a pause. "Why would you go see a lawyer?" "To update my will. It was long overdue." "Mom, you don't need to worry about that right now. You're going to be fine." "The doctors at Sunset Manor said your health is good for your age." "My health is excellent. That's not the point. The point is that I've made some changes you should know about." Another pause, longer this time. "What kind of changes?" "The kind that reflect my current circumstances. It's amazing how much clarity you gain when you realize your own son sees you as a burden." "I never said you were a burden." "You didn't have to say it, Michael. Actions speak louder than words." I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, probably calculating how much money we were talking about. He'd always been good with numbers, even as a child. "Look, Mom, if this is about the nursing home, we can talk about other options. Maybe we could look into home care, or—" "It's too late for that." "What do you mean, too late?" "I mean, the papers are already signed. The trust is established. Your inheritance has been redistributed." The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, the way it got when he was trying not to lose his temper in court. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the Robert Patterson Memorial Scholarship Fund. It will help deserving students pay for college. Students who understand the value of hard work and family loyalty." "You gave my inheritance to strangers?" "I gave it to people who will appreciate it. People who won't see it as just another line item in their portfolio." "Mom, you can't do this. You're not thinking clearly. The stress of the move, the adjustment to a new place." "My mind is perfectly clear, clearer than it's been in years." "I'm coming over there. We need to talk about this face to face." "No, you're not. You're not coming over here to manipulate me or guilt me into changing my mind. You had your chance to talk to me face to face. You chose to drop me off like a piece of luggage instead. I was trying to help you. You were trying to solve a problem, the problem of having an aging mother who might interfere with your perfectly ordered life." For the first time in our conversation, Michael's composure cracked. "That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" "Fair would have been asking me what I wanted instead of deciding for me. Fair would have been visiting me more than twice a year. Fair would have been treating me like a human being instead of an inconvenience. I visit you. You visit your obligation to me. There's a difference." I could hear him moving around on the other end of the line, probably pacing his office the way he'd paced the nursing home lobby. "How much did you leave me?" "Enough to show that I didn't forget you're my son,
not enough to make you comfortable. And the house will be sold to fund the scholarship. Mom, please, think about what you're doing. That house has been in our family for decades. It's where Dad worked himself to death trying to provide for you, where I worked double shifts to pay for your education,
Where I waited up every night worrying about you, and where you couldn't be bothered to visit me more than a few times a year. I'll contest the will. On what grounds? That I'm mentally incompetent? Go ahead and try. I've been evaluated by 3 different doctors in the past month. They all say I'm sharp as a tack. Michael was quiet for so long I thought he might have hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, smaller. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I thought I was doing the right thing. You thought you were doing the convenient thing. There's a difference. Can we fix this? Can we talk about it? We're talking about it now. I mean, in person. Let me come see you. Let me explain. I looked around the business center, at the motivational posters on the walls, and the other residents shuffling past in the hallway. You know where to find me. I'll be there tonight. Michael? Yes? Don't bring flowers. Don't bring guilt. Don't bring any of your lawyer tricks. Just bring yourself. The son I raised, not the stranger you've become. After I hung up, I sat in that little room for a long time, thinking about what I'd just done. I'd declared war on my own son, and there was no going back now. But for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Michael arrived at 7:30 that evening, just as the dinner dishes were being cleared away. I was in the day room, pretending to read a magazine while actually watching the parking lot through the window. When I saw his silver BMW pull up, my heart started racing despite my determination to stay calm. He looked different somehow, less polished than usual. His tie was loosened, his usually perfect hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He stood in the doorway of the day room for a moment, scanning the residence until he found me. Mom, Michael. He pulled up a chair beside mine, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the expensive kind his wife had given him for Christmas. You look good, he said, and I could hear the surprise in his voice. Did you expect me to be drooling in a wheelchair? No, you look healthy, alert. I am alert. That's the problem. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Mom, I want to apologize. I handled this all wrong. I should have talked to you first, should have asked what you wanted instead of making assumptions. Yes, you should have. I was scared, he said quietly. When you fell, when you seemed confused sometimes, I was scared of losing you. I thought if I could get you somewhere safe, somewhere with professionals who could watch out for you. You thought you could warehouse me and forget about me. That's not true. Then why haven't you visited me once since you dropped me off? Why haven't you called? Why did it take me threatening your inheritance to get your attention? Michael was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. I don't know. I guess I thought it would be easier if I gave you time to adjust first. Easier for who? For both of us. I set down my magazine and turned to face him fully. Michael, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen carefully. I don't need time to adjust. I need my son back. I'm here. No, you're not. You're here because you're worried about money. The son I raised would have been here because he was worried about me. His face crumpled slightly, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I am worried about you. I've been worried about you for years. Then why didn't you talk to me about it? Because I didn't know how. Because every time I tried to bring up the subject of you maybe needing help, you'd get angry and change the subject. So you decided to bypass me entirely and make the decision for me? I thought I was protecting you. From what? From having a say in my own life? Michael stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where his expensive car sat gleaming under the security lights. "I don't know how to do this, Mom. I don't know how to be the son you need me to be. Start by treating me like a person instead of a problem to be solved. I never meant to, but you did. You saw an inconvenience and you fixed it. You saw something that didn't fit neatly into your life, and you found a place to put it where it wouldn't bother you." He turned back to me, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Being sorry doesn't change what you did. No, but maybe it's a start. Maybe we can figure out how to fix this. The trust is irrevocable, Michael. The money is gone. I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about us. I studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulative lawyer I'd come to expect, but all I saw was my son, looking lost and ashamed and genuinely sorry. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I want to bring you home." "To the house? The one you were so eager to have me sell?" "To our house. Jennifer and I have been talking, and we think you should come live with us." I almost laughed. "Have you told Jennifer about the scholarship fund?" "She's the one who suggested it. She said if I was more concerned about your money than your happiness, maybe I didn't deserve either one." That surprised me. I'd always thought Jennifer saw me as an obligation, something she had to tolerate because she'd married Michael. "And what about you? What do you think you deserve?" "I think I deserve the chance to prove that I'm still the son you raised, even if it takes the rest of my life." "And if I say no? If I decide I like it here after all?" Michael's face went pale. "Then I'll respect that. But I'll visit you every day. I'll call you every morning. I'll be the son I should have been from the beginning." "Every day?" "Every day. Jennifer said she'd come with me on weekends. She wants to get to know you better." I looked around the day room, at the other residents watching television or playing cards or just sitting quietly in their chairs. Some of them had been here for years, and some of them probably belonged here. But I wasn't one of them, and we both knew it. "I'll consider it," I said. "Really?" "On one condition." "Anything." "The scholarship fund stays. Every penny of it. If you want to take care of me, you do it because you love me, not because you're expecting a payoff." Michael nodded without hesitation. "Of course. I don't want your money, Mom. I want my mother back." "You might not get the same person back. I'm not the woman who raised you. I'm older, I'm more stubborn, and I'm not as willing to make everyone else's life easier at the expense of my own." "Good. Maybe that's exactly who you should be." For the first time in months, I smiled at my son. A real smile, not the polite mask I'd been wearing since he'd started treating me like an invalid. "There's something else," I said. "What?" "I want to be involved in the scholarship selection. I want to meet the kids who are going to benefit from this fund. I want to know their stories. I think James Whitmore would be happy to arrange that. And I want to volunteer somewhere. I want to do something useful with my time. Whatever you want, Mom, whatever makes you happy." I reached over and took his hand, noting how soft it was compared to his father's had been. Michael had never done manual labor, never worked with his hands the way his father had. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that was what all those years of sacrifice had been for. "I'll need a few days to think about it," I said. "This is a big decision." "Take all the time you need. I'll be here every day until you decide." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. I have a lot to make up for." As he prepared to leave, Michael hesitated at the door. "Mom, the letter James is holding for me. What does it say?" I smiled. "It says that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to prove they're better than you thought they were." Michael kept his word. He showed up the next morning at 9 o'clock sharp, carrying coffee and pastries from the bakery I'd loved when I still lived in my own house. He found me in the day room, working on a crossword puzzle with Dorothy, who was having one of her clearer days. "Good morning, Mom. Dorothy." He nodded politely to my roommate, who looked him up and down with the sharp eyes of someone who's raised 5 children and wasn't easily impressed. "You must be the son," Dorothy said. "I'm trying to make amends." "Good. She's too good for this place." Dorothy went back to her puzzle, but I could see her listening to every word we said. "I brought your favorite," Michael said, setting the coffee and pastries on the small table between us. "Blueberry scones from Morrison's Bakery." "I remember." "I also brought these." He pulled out a manila folder. "The deed to the house, the insurance papers, everything you'll need if you decide to move back in." I opened the folder and looked at the familiar documents.
I thought you were planning to sell it. I was, but I've changed my mind. It's your house, Mom. It should be your decision. What about the upkeep, the maintenance, all the reasons you said I couldn't live there anymore? I'll take care of all of that. I'll hire a service to come in and clean once a week. I'll make sure the yard is maintained. I'll have someone check on you every day if that's what it takes. And what about Jennifer? Is she really on board with this, or is she just being polite? Michael smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. She's excited about it, actually. She said she's been wanting to get to know you better for years, but she was always intimidated by how competent you were. Intimidated by me? She said you always seemed to have everything together, so confident, so good at everything. She felt like she was constantly being compared to you and coming up short. This was news to me. I'd always thought Jennifer was the one who found me lacking, too working class, too outspoken, too set in my ways. I never said anything to make her feel that way. You didn't have to. She said you were always so put together, so confident, so good at everything. She felt like she was constantly being compared to you and coming up short. I was never trying to compete with her. I know that now, but maybe we all need to try a little harder to understand each other. I sipped my coffee and thought about all the family dinners where Jennifer had seemed uncomfortable, all the times she'd made excuses to leave early or hadn't come at all. I'd assumed she just didn't like me, but maybe she'd been as nervous as I was, both of us trying too hard to impress each other. "If I come home," I said slowly, "things will be different. I'm not going to pretend to be weaker than I am just to make everyone else feel useful. I wouldn't want you to. And I'm not going to sit quietly in a corner while you make decisions about my life. I don't want you to do that either. And I'm serious about the volunteer work. I want to do something meaningful with my time. Whatever you want, Mom. Whatever makes you happy." I looked around the day room one more time, at the other residents and the cheerful decorations and the staff members who meant well but treated everyone like children. It wasn't a terrible place, but it wasn't home. "I'll come back," I said, "but I want to stay here for the rest of the week. I want to say goodbye properly, and I want to make sure Dorothy has someone to work crossword puzzles with. Of course, I'll pick you up on Sunday afternoon. Sunday morning, I want to go to church in my own pew. Sunday morning it is." After Michael left, I found myself surrounded by curious residents who'd overheard our conversation. Margaret was particularly interested in the details. "So you're really leaving?" she asked. "I'm really leaving. Lucky you. Wish I could pull a stunt like that." "What kind of stunt?" "The inheritance thing, making your kids sweat a little. Mine wouldn't care if I left everything to the local dog shelter."
I looked at Margaret, really looked at her. She was about my age, well-dressed, obviously intelligent. "What happened between you and your daughter?" "Same thing that happened between you and your son, I expect. She got busy with her own life and forgot I had one too. Maybe it's not too late to remind her." "Maybe, but I don't have your courage." "You think I'm brave?" "I think you're the bravest person I've met in years. Most people would have just accepted their fate and faded away quietly. You fought back." That afternoon, I called James Whitmore to discuss the scholarship fund. He'd already received several applications, and he wanted to set up a meeting for the following week so I could help review them. "I'm particularly interested in one young man," he said. His name is Carlos Martinez. He's working 2 jobs to help support his family while going to community college part-time. His essay about why he wants to pursue a business degree is remarkable. What makes it remarkable? He says he wants to create jobs in his community, to give other people the opportunities he never had. He reminds me of your son, actually, but before success changed him. I'd like to meet him. I'll arrange it. Eleanor, I have to say, this scholarship fund is going to make a real difference in people's lives. You should be proud of what you've done. I am proud. For the first time in months, I'm proud of something. That evening, I had dinner with Dorothy, Sarah, and Margaret. We talked about books and movies and the lives we'd lived before we'd ended up here. It struck me that these women were interesting people with rich histories, but nobody ever asked them about their stories anymore. They were just elderly residents to be managed and medicated and kept safe. "I'm going to miss you," Dorothy said as we were finishing our dessert. "I'm going to miss you too, but I'll come visit. Promise?" "Promise." "Good. And when you do, bring me some of those blueberry scones. The food here isn't terrible, but it's not great either." Later that night, I called Jennifer. She answered on the second ring, sounding surprised to hear from me. "Eleanor, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, dear. I just wanted to talk to you about Michael's plan to bring me home." "Oh." She sounded nervous. "I hope you know that I'm happy about it. I really am." "Are you? Or are you just being polite?" There was a long pause. "I'm happy about it," she said finally. "I've wanted to get to know you better for years, but I was always afraid you didn't approve of me." "Why would you think that?" "Because you always seemed so capable, so independent. I felt like I could never measure up to the standard you'd set for Michael." "Jennifer, I never wanted to set any standards for you. I just wanted my son to be happy." "Really?" "Really. And if you're willing to put up with an opinionated old woman who's not going to fade quietly into the background, then I think we're going to get along just fine." Jennifer laughed, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "I'd like that."
I'd like that very much. Good, because I have some ideas about how we can make this work, and I'm going to need your help. What kind of ideas? Well, for starters, I want to turn the spare bedroom into an office where I can work on the scholarship fund. And I want to start hosting Sunday dinners again, real family dinners where we actually talk to each other instead of just making polite conversation. That sounds wonderful. And I want to get to know my grandchildren better, really know them, not just see them on holidays. They'd love that. Sarah's been asking about you, wondering why you moved away. What did you tell her? That sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense to anyone else. I smiled. That's probably the most honest explanation anyone's given about this whole situation. We talked for another 20 minutes, making plans and sharing ideas. For the first time since Michael had married her, Jennifer and I had a real conversation. Not the careful, polite exchanges we'd always managed before, but an actual discussion between 2 women who cared about the same people. When I finally hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: excitement about the future. For months, I'd been dreading each day, wondering how much longer I'd be able to maintain my independence, how much longer before I became completely irrelevant to my own life. Now I had projects to work on, relationships to rebuild, and a chance to prove that being 73 didn't mean being finished. The next few days passed quickly. Michael visited every morning, sometimes bringing Jennifer and the kids. My 10-year-old granddaughter, Sarah, was fascinated by the nursing home, asking the residents dozens of questions about their lives and their families. My 8-year-old grandson, David, was more interested in the fish tank in the lobby, but he stayed close to me whenever they visited, holding my hand and telling me about school. "Grandma," Sarah said on Friday morning, "are you really coming to live with us?" "I'm really coming home to my own house, but your parents and I are going to see each other a lot more often." "Good. I missed you." "I missed you too, sweetheart. Why did you have to move here in the first place?" I looked at Michael, who was listening carefully to our conversation, because sometimes people make mistakes when they're trying to help someone they love. Dad made a mistake? We both made mistakes, but we're going to fix them. Saturday evening, the staff at Sunset Manor threw me a small going-away party. It wasn't much, cake in the day room and a card signed by everyone on the third floor, but it meant more to me than they probably realized. These people had been kind to me during one of the hardest weeks of my life, and I wouldn't forget that. "You take care of yourself," Brenda said, giving me a hug. "And remember, if things don't work out the way you hope, you always have a place here." "Thank you. That means a lot." Margaret pulled me aside as the party was winding down.
"I've been thinking about what you said, about reminding my daughter that I still have a life. And I'm going to call her, not to complain or make demands, but just to talk. Maybe invite her to lunch somewhere that isn't here. I think that's a wonderful idea. Wish me luck." "You don't need luck. You just need courage, and you have more of that than you think." That night, I packed my suitcases one more time, but this time it felt different. I wasn't packing to go into exile. I was packing to go home, to reclaim my life and rebuild my relationships and start the next chapter of my story. I thought about the scholarship fund, about Carlos Martinez and the other students who would benefit from it. I thought about the letter James was holding, the one that explained everything to Michael. Maybe I'd have him return it unopened. Maybe some things were better said face to face. As I folded my clothes and gathered my few belongings, I realized that the week at Sunset Manor hadn't been wasted time. It had taught me something important about myself. I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for, and I wasn't ready to surrender control of my life to anyone. Not to age, not to fear, and certainly not to a son who'd forgotten that his mother was still a person worth knowing. Tomorrow I would go home, but I was already a different person than the one who'd been wheeled through these doors a week ago. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear, the kind of autumn day that makes you grateful to be alive. Michael and Jennifer arrived at 10 o'clock, just as I was finishing my goodbye breakfast with Dorothy. She'd been having a good morning, more alert than usual, and I was glad we could have one last clear conversation. "You remember what I told you about the crossword puzzles?" I said, squeezing her hand. "The 7-letter words are usually the key to everything else," she recited dutifully. "That's right. And remember what I said about Margaret? She's lonely, not mean. Give her a chance." Perfect. I hugged her goodbye, knowing this might be the last time I saw her this lucid. "Take care of yourself, Dorothy. You too, Eleanor. And don't let them treat you like an old lady." Michael loaded my suitcases into his car, while Jennifer signed the discharge papers. The staff was efficient and friendly, treating my departure like a normal occurrence rather than the dramatic escape it felt like to me. As we drove through the familiar streets toward my house, I felt my heart rate picking up. I'd been gone only a week, but it felt like a lifetime. Everything looked the same, yet somehow different, sharper, more vivid, more precious than I'd remembered. "Are you nervous?" Jennifer asked from the front passenger seat. "A little. It's strange, being nervous about going to your own home." "It's going to be different now," Michael said. "Better, I hope." "Different how?" "Well, for one thing, I hired a cleaning service."
They've been there twice this week, getting everything ready for you. "And I stocked your refrigerator," Jennifer added. "I hope I got the right things. I tried to remember what you usually keep on hand." "I'm sure it's fine." But as we pulled into my driveway, I could see it was more than fine. The yard had been mowed and the flower beds weeded. The front porch had been swept, and there was a new welcome mat by the door. Someone had even cleaned the windows. "You didn't have to do all this," I said, though I was touched by the effort. "Yes, we did," Michael said. "We had a lot to make up for." Inside, the house smelled like lemon oil and fresh flowers. There was a bouquet of chrysanthemums on the kitchen table, my favorite fall flower, and the refrigerator was indeed fully stocked. But what surprised me most was what they hadn't changed. All my furniture was in the same places. All my photographs were still on the mantel.
All my books were still on their shelves. I was afraid you might have decided to redecorate while I was gone, I said. This is your home, Mom. We just wanted to make sure it was ready for you. I walked through each room slowly, reacquainting myself with the spaces I'd inhabited for so many years. The living room where I'd watched Michael take his first steps. The kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals. The bedroom I'd shared with his father for 37 years before losing him to a heart attack. In my bedroom, I found something new. A small bell on the nightstand. What's this for? In case you need anything during the night, Jennifer explained. I'll be staying in the guest room for the first few days, just until we're all comfortable with the new arrangement. You don't have to do that. I want to. Besides, it'll give us a chance to get to know each other better. That afternoon, we drove to James Whitmore's office so I could meet Carlos Martinez. He was a thin young man with serious dark eyes and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. When James introduced us, he shook my hand with the kind of firm grip his father had probably taught him. Mrs. Patterson, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. This scholarship is going to change my life. Tell me about yourself, Carlos. What do you want to do with your degree? I want to start a business that creates jobs in my neighborhood. Too many good people there don't have opportunities, you know. They're smart and hardworking, but nobody gives them a chance. I liked him immediately. He reminded me of myself at that age, hungry for something better, but willing to work for it. What kind of business? A landscaping company to start with. But eventually, I want to expand into construction, maybe even real estate development. I want to build things that last, create something that'll be there for the next generation. That's a worthy goal. My mom says you gave up your inheritance to create this scholarship.
Why would you do something like that? I glanced at Michael, who was listening to our conversation with obvious interest. Because I believe in investing in people who understand the value of hard work. And because sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to prove what they're capable of. I won't let you down, Mrs. Patterson, I promise. I know you won't. On the drive home, Michael was quiet. When we pulled into the driveway, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. He reminds me of myself at that age. Yes, he does. Before you forgot where you came from. I never forgot. I just got distracted by other things. Success can be a dangerous distraction if you're not careful. I'm learning that. That evening, Jennifer cooked dinner, pot roast with all the fixings, the kind of meal I'd been making for Sunday dinners for 40 years. We ate in the dining room using the good china I'd been saving for special occasions. This is nice, Sarah said, looking around the table. It feels like a real family dinner. What did it feel like before? I asked. Like everyone was just being polite, out of the mouths of babes. She was right. We had been just being polite, going through the motions of being a family without actually connecting with each other. Well, we're going to have real family dinners from now on, I said. Every Sunday, right here at this table. Can I help you cook? Jennifer asked. I'd like that very much. After dinner, Michael helped me set up my new office in the spare bedroom. We arranged a desk by the window and set up a filing system for the scholarship applications. It felt good to have a project again, something meaningful to focus my energy on. Mom, Michael said as we were finishing up, I owe you an apology. A real one, not the kind I give in court when I'm trying to win a case. I'm listening. I was scared of losing you, but instead of talking to you about it, I tried to control the situation. I tried to manage you like you were a problem instead of treating you like my mother. Yes, you did. I know saying I'm sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I want you to know that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the son you deserve. I don't need the rest of your life, Michael. I just need you to remember that I'm still here, still thinking, still feeling, still capable of making my own decisions. I will, I promise. Good, because I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. That night, I lay in my own bed for the first time in a week, listening to the familiar sounds of my house settling around me.
Jennifer was in the guest room down the hall, and I could hear her moving around quietly, getting ready for bed. It was comforting to know someone else was there, but not because I needed taking care of, just because it's nice not to be alone. I thought about Dorothy, probably working on a crossword puzzle in her chair by the window. I thought about Margaret, hopefully calling her daughter tomorrow.
I thought about Carlos Martinez, studying late into the night because he understood the value of the opportunity he'd been given. And I thought about the letter in James Whitmore's safe, the one I'd written to explain my decision to Michael. Tomorrow I would ask James to destroy it. Some lessons are better learned through experience than explanation. I'd spent a week being treated like an inconvenience, and in response, I'd rewritten my will and redistributed my wealth. It sounds dramatic when you put it like that, but really, all I'd done was refuse to disappear quietly. I'd insisted on mattering, on having a say in my own life, on being seen as a person rather than a problem. The scholarship fund would outlast me, would help deserving students for years to come. That felt like a worthy legacy. But more importantly, I'd gotten my son back, not the successful lawyer who saw me as an obligation, but the boy I'd raised to believe in hard work and family loyalty. As I drifted off to sleep in my own bed, in my own house, surrounded by my own things and my own memories, I realized something important. I'd won. Not because I'd punished Michael or proven a point, but because I'd refused to let anyone else write the ending to my story. I was 73 years old, and I was just getting started.